Hello and welcome back to What's the Obsession? What are the biggest discrepancies, issues, and questions surrounding the Watts case? When it comes to the issues and questions, they come in a few forms. First of all, there are the literal discrepancies that we find within the documents that make up the 1960-page discovery about the Watts case. There are issues of integrity in the investigation. Questions have come up like, why wasn't this person or that person questioned by the authorities? Or particularly in the case of Chris Watts' former mistress, why wasn't she pressed further for precise details when she was questioned by investigators? There are also questions about whether or not Chris Watts' confessed timeline is realistic or not. There are legitimate questions regarding whether or not the very details of Chris Watts' confession are possible given the evidence that law enforcement has collected, at least the evidence that we have access to. There are questions about the evidence itself. Why was some evidence collected but it wasn't analyzed? And perhaps the biggest question is, did Chris Watts commit this crime on his own, or is there unfinished justice in the name of the victims, Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and unborn baby Nico? Was anyone else involved in this horrific crime? Let's start by identifying the big question. Was anyone else with Chris Watts, or did anyone else help him out with this crime? Let's listen to a small portion of Chris Watts' interview with Tammy Lee and FBI Special Agent Graham Coder before he was arrested. This is when they're trying to break him down and get the truth out of him. It's just before his father, Ronnie Watts, comes into the interrogation or interview room to speak with him. And let's hear what Graham Coder and Tammy Lee are saying about what they think happened that awful morning.
Like, there's nothing, just because
Chris, people can be pushed to the point where they do something that they regret. It happens every single day.
I know.
But part of what makes you a man is the guy that goes, I really fucked up, but this is what I did, and I'm going to pay for what I did, and I'm going to tell you what I did, and I'm going to be honest about it.
Chris, we can keep talking to you once we find these girls, okay? And once we find these girls and your wife, right, no matter how we find them, no matter what condition they're in, we can keep talking to you, and you can tell us, guys, it's not as bad as it looks. And you can say, let me tell you what happened. I was never comfortable with you, Graham, or with you, Tam. I wasn't comfortable yet, but now that everything's known, now that these girls are found and Shanann's found, however they're found, it's okay. We can keep talking to you. Okay?
Chris, did Shanann do something to them?
No, I don't know.
I'm serious.
I have no clue.
No, you would have known, because they didn't leave the house. Did Shanann do something to them, and then did you feel like you had to do something to Shanann?
No, they were at the house when I left. They were there.
They weren't there. They didn't leave. They vanished.
They were
The
there.
only way they could have left is in your truck.
There's no way, because, like, I didn't just throw them in my truck.
You know your truck has GPS,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Because you told your boss, like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm going through separation, I'm maybe staying
Yeah.
at a friend's house, whatever. You know that thing pings every 10 seconds?
Yep.
So we will know
You can't turn
exactly
it off.
I know.
where you went.
And your company's giving that to us.
So there, you heard Colorado Bureau of Investigation's Tammy Lee say it herself. She knows that Shanann, Bella, and Celeste left in Chris Watts' work truck. The investigators know that. There's really no other way they could have left unless they left through the back, which some people keep open as a possibility, and we really cannot rule it out since this case was not completely investigated. The question I have regarding the evidence that is presented in the discovery documents is if Tammy Lee and the investigators knew or felt they knew that the family left in Chris Watts' work truck, then why did they handle the evidence that was taken from Chris Watts' work truck in the way that they ultimately did? Let me explain. In the discovery, there's a detailed description of how each vehicle was handled, both Shanann's Lexus and Chris Watts' work truck, the Ford F-250. So we're particularly interested in this part under scene investigation and vehicles. It says on Tuesday, August 21st, 2018 at 1600 hours, myself and FSK Henson arrived at a certain location to process and execute a search warrant for the two vehicles which possibly had been used to transport the deceased victims in the case. So going down to the third paragraph, after a brief discussion, it was decided that CBI would photograph, collect, and package all evidence located. CBI would also use adhesive-based rollers and collect any possible hairs, fibers, and other trace evidence from the Ford truck in an attempt to determine any recent possible occupants of the vehicle. What I find to be of particular interest is the notation that the adhesive rollers collecting evidence, also known, guys, as trace lifts, was for the purpose of detecting any possible passengers or people that were transported in that vehicle. So, given that Tammy Lee herself told us and told Chris Watts that one thing she knew was that Shanann, Bella, and Celeste were transported away from their house, 2825 Saratoga Trail, in his work truck, you would think that they would want to collect all evidence and analyze all possible evidence related to Chris Watts' work truck. Wouldn't you think?
The only way they could have left is in your truck. The only way they could have left is in your truck.
Nicole Kessinger turned out to have information that I can best describe as being a bombshell.
Initially, you drew concern from me when you told me you deleted everything from Chris. I've already told you that. You understand why. There's no question as to why that might cause concern. So,
okay, my friend. So there you heard Tammy Lee telling Chris Watts that she knows that Bella, Celeste, and his wife Shanann left their home in his work truck, and they were missing at the time. He hadn't confessed at all yet. And then we have DA Rourke describing the information Nicole Kessinger gave law enforcement as being bombshell information. And then we have CBI's agent Kevin Kobach talking to Miss Kessinger and saying, initially you drew concern for me when you deleted all of your text messages between yourself and Chris Watts, and there's no question as to why that is. So what have we established? We have established that investigators know that Chris's missing family left the home in his work truck, that Miss Kessinger is a big part of this investigation, according to DA Rourke, bombshell information. And then we have the multiple interviews with Nicole Kessinger and Kevin Kobach in which she repeatedly lies about why she deleted her messages, the text messages between herself and Chris Watts, and any information that relates to Chris Watts on her phone. Kobach comes straight out and tells her, you're shady. Considering investigators know that Miss Kessinger knows so much that she has such an intimate and close relationship with Chris Watts right up until the day his family went missing, and they also know that she has been dishonest, that she destroyed evidence in this case, this triple plus homicide case. And these investigators, they don't really know what part she may have played leading up to, during the murders, or in the attempted cover-up of the murders. They also know that Chris Watts' work truck played a pivotal part in this crime. Don't you think they would want to know exactly who was in that truck, and particularly if Miss Kessinger was in that truck with Chris Watts? And even if they were going to protect her, even if they didn't care if Kessinger was in that truck with Chris Watts, don't you think that they would want to corroborate his confession and prove scientifically, with scientific evidence, that his confession was true? That the body of his deceased wife and his alive children were in the back of his work truck on that drive from Saratoga Trail to Survey 319? Wouldn't you think they would want to know that if they had the evidence right at their fingertips? There are many shortcomings from an investigative standpoint in this case that I and many others find shocking, but this one I always find to be among the most stunning of them all. Let me read you part of this supplement from the discovery. It should be noted that on September 4th, 2018, while running through the evidence submission list with lab tech Patricia Lopez, several items were listed that CBI Lab ultimately did not wish to take possession of at that time. Those items are crossed out on the evidence submission form, which has been added to the case file. The refused items are as follows. I'm going to read the last three items. Driver's side seat cover from work truck. Trace lift from center console of Chris Watts' work truck. And trace lift from back seat driver side of Chris Watts' work truck. The items that were not taken by CBI are transported back to the Frederick Police Department and checked into evidence. Nothing further. So my friends, what that means is the trace lifts that were taken from Chris Watts' work truck for the purpose of determining if any other occupants were in that truck, that evidence was actually collected. But CBI, Colorado Bureau of Investigation, chose to not send that evidence to their labs to analyze the evidence, to determine what DNA could be found, what hair could be found, what other evidence, trace evidence could be found that would decisively identify what, if any, occupants were in Chris Watts' work truck, and they could also determine if those occupants were alive or deceased. Now, when I've brought this issue up before, people might refute it by saying, oh, well, maybe, well, hey, right there it says they didn't wish to take it into evidence at that time, so maybe they analyze this evidence another time. But guys, we know that's not the case, because District Attorney Rourke went with the story that Shanann, Bella, and Celeste were all murdered in their home at 2825 Saratoga Trail until Tammy Lee, Dave Baumhover, and Graham Coder went to interview Chris Watts in prison after he was already serving his 5 consecutive life sentences on February 18th, 2018, over 3 months after his sentencing. At that time, Chris Watts then gave them a more complete confession, informing them of what apparently really happened, that Shanann's life was taken at the home, and that sweet little Bella and Celeste made that car ride from Saratoga Trail to Survey 319 45 minutes, alive, with their mother's body on the floorboard beneath their feet. And it wasn't until they arrived at Survey 319 did they take their last breaths. People who were involved in law enforcement, and unanimously, they believe that this trace lift in DNA evidence would have determined if Shanann, Bella, and Celeste were in fact in that truck, if Nicole Kessinger or any other party was in fact in that truck, and if those occupants were in fact alive or deceased. So the question remains, why did CBI choose to not analyze this critical evidence that had already been collected?
I have all these things that I can't tell you.
We must remember how serious this crime and remember the victims. Rest in peace, sweet angels. Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and baby Nico.
Bella wants another sister or brother. What do you want? Do you want another brother or sister?
Sister.
You want another sister?
Baby.
Baby? Say hi.
Hi.
Hi. Do you want a brother or a sister?
Sister.
You want a little sister?
Yeah.
You want to be a big sister?
Yeah.
Yeah. Give me kisses.
Can you blow them kisses? Blow them kisses.
No.
Now, can I see your costume-like outfit? Show it. It's Supergirl, right? Supergirl.
For a kiss. Oh, good job, Bella. Yes. Good job. All right, say goodbye, everybody. Wave. Bella, say goodbye. Say bye. Say bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. She doesn't stop. Bye, guys. I'll see you guys later.